I first drove into Harrow Creek on a Tuesday morning in late September, the kind of morning where the air smells faintly like rust and dying leaves. The welcome sign was half covered in kudzu, the paint so faded you could barely make out the town's slogan underneath, a good place to call home. Population, 1872. That number hadn't changed in 15 years, according to the guy at the diner. He said it like it was something to be proud of. The town itself looked like a movie set that no one bothered to tear down after filming. 2 streets across like a crooked T, a hardware store that doubled as a post office, and a barber shop that still had the same red and white pole spinning out front. Everyone nodded politely when you passed, but it wasn't the kind of friendliness that made you feel welcome. It was more like surveillance, like they were making sure you were real. I was renting an old 2-bedroom house just past the creek, a fixer-upper I found online for dirt cheap. The owner, a woman named Mrs. Adler, mailed me the keys wrapped in yellowed newspaper. No lease, no phone number, just a note that said, "The last tenant didn't stay long. Hope you're handier than he was." I didn't think much of it at the time. My first night there, the power went out around 9 p.m. I was sitting in the living room when the silence hit. Not just quiet, but the kind that feels alive, like the whole world is holding its breath. I opened the front door and saw that every house on the street was dark too, except one. The McCarthy house, 3 doors down, had its porch light still burning bright, even though the rest of the street was swallowed in black. There was a man standing out front, motionless, just standing there, facing the road. I almost called out to him, but something about the way he didn't move stopped me. He wasn't smoking or waiting for someone, just standing. Then, as I watched, the porch light blinked out. By morning, the lights were back. Everything looked normal again. At the diner, I mentioned the outage to the waitress, a woman with nicotine fingers and the tired smile of someone who's heard everything. She poured my coffee, shrugged, and said, "Power's fine. You probably just blew a fuse." When I asked about the McCarthy place, her hand froze for a second before she set the pot down. "There's no McCarthy house. That lot's been empty since the fire." Then she smiled again, too wide, and changed the subject to the weather. That's when I realized something strange about Harrow Creek. People didn't lie because they were hiding something. They lied because they'd forgotten it was ever true. And somewhere, deep down, I think the town liked it that way.
The first time I saw him, it was just after dawn. A thin mist hung low over Harrow Creek, curling around the trees like smoke from a dying fire. I'd gone out for a walk, trying to shake off a dream I couldn't quite remember, something about voices whispering under the floorboards. The road out of town wound past a row of abandoned sheds and ended at a narrow bridge made of weathered wood. It didn't even look safe to cross. Half the planks were rotted through. Still, I walked closer, drawn by the sound of water, even though the creek had supposedly dried up years ago. That's when I saw him. A man standing dead center on the bridge, tall, thin, in a faded brown coat. He wasn't moving, just staring down into the empty creek bed like he'd lost something down there. For a long moment I thought maybe he hadn't noticed me. Then he turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see his face. There was something wrong about it. Not grotesque, not like in a horror movie, just off. His skin looked too pale for the morning light, like wax left near a candle. His mouth hung open a little, and when he finally spoke, the sound came out dry and soft, like paper tearing. "They don't let us leave," he said. I froze. "Who doesn't?" I asked. He blinked, slow, like the question confused him. Then he turned back toward the creek and said, "You'll see. You'll see soon." Before I could say anything else, a gust of wind rolled through, kicking up dust and dead leaves. For half a second I looked away, and when I looked back, the bridge was empty. No man, no footprints, nothing. I crossed the bridge anyway, maybe out of stubbornness, maybe out of curiosity. The wood creaked under my shoes, but there was no sound of water below, only a faint humming like electricity running through the ground. That afternoon I stopped by the diner again and asked about the bridge. The same waitress from before looked at me like I'd told a bad joke. "Sweetheart, there's no bridge out that way. Got washed out in the flood back in '96. I told her I'd just been there, that I'd crossed it. Her face went completely still. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached for the coffee pot and poured me another cup. "Drink up. It's a long walk back." When I left, I looked in the window and saw her still standing there, staring at my empty booth, like she was trying to remember something. That night, when I passed the mirror in the hallway, I caught a reflection behind me, a thin, pale figure standing on the bridge. Only problem was, there's no bridge anywhere near my house.
The next few days passed in a strange kind of fog. Not literal fog. The air was clear enough, but that heavy, cotton-like stillness you get when something's wrong and nobody wants to admit it. I started noticing little absences around town. The grocery store used to have a kid who bagged items, skinny, freckles, always humming that same country tune. One morning, he just wasn't there. When I asked the cashier about him, she frowned like she didn't understand the question. "What kid?" she said. "The one with the red hair, you know, the one who—" But her face stayed blank. Even stranger, the next day, there was a different boy behind the counter. Same build, same freckles, just not the same person. When I looked at his name tag, it said Eli, but I could swear it used to say Caleb. That night, I checked the town website, if you can even call it that. It looked like something built in 2002 and never updated. No news, no obituaries, no missing person reports. Just a list of local events, all canceled except for one recurring entry. Town hall meeting, every first Monday, attendance encouraged. When I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Adler, about it, she smiled politely, the way old people do when they're humoring you. "Oh, those meetings are just for formality. Everyone here gets along fine. No need for big city drama." But she said big city drama like it meant something darker. That evening, I walked through the park. It was empty except for a playground, swings squeaking in the wind, though there was no one around. On the bulletin board beside it, there were missing pet posters, cats, dogs, even a parrot. But every face on those flyers was scratched out with thick black ink. When I leaned closer, I saw a corner of something beneath one of the papers. An older notice, yellowed with tape residue. It wasn't for a pet, it was for a girl. Mara Hughes, age 14, last seen near Harrow Creek Middle School. The photo showed a smiling kid with braids and a chipped front tooth, but someone had written across it in red marker, "Found." Only thing is, the ink looked wet. Later that night, I brought it up to Mrs. Adler. She frowned, shook her head, and said, "There's never been a girl named Mara in this town." Then she added, almost absently, "You must have misread it. Memory plays tricks on newcomers." Before bed, I checked the spot where I'd pinned the notice on my fridge. It was gone. In its place was a different paper I didn't put there. The rental note from when I first moved in. Same yellowed newspaper wrapping, same words, "Hope you're handier than the last tenant." Except this time, scrawled at the bottom in that same red marker, "She's not the last."
The blackout came on a Friday. I remember because the town's single radio station, WCRK 889, was playing a call-in show about harvest season, and the host had just said something like, "Ain't nothing like a clean conscience and a good crop," right before the power went out. The whole house fell silent at once. No hum of the refrigerator, no clock tick, not even the buzz of streetlights outside. It was like the world had been switched off mid-sentence. I lit a candle and went to the window. The sky was darker than I'd ever seen it. Not clouded, just absent. Usually, even in rural towns, there's a faint glow somewhere on the horizon. But here, nothing. The stars were gone. Across the street, I could see silhouettes moving, not walking, standing, dozens of them. Some right in front of houses, some in the middle of the road, perfectly still, facing the same direction, toward the old water tower on the hill. I tried calling out, "Hello!" None of them moved. Then from somewhere far away came a sound I couldn't explain. It wasn't thunder or machinery, more like a deep, rhythmic exhale coming from the ground itself. Each breath made the glass in the windows tremble. I stepped onto the porch, and that's when I noticed it. Every light in town was out, except one. The church steeple glowed faintly against the horizon, like a candle behind frosted glass. As I started walking toward it, I passed a row of people standing along Main Street. Their eyes were open, unfocused. Some of them whispered, though their lips barely moved. The words were low, stretched thin, just fragments. Don't remember. Don't remember. When I reached the church steps, the door was open, swinging slightly. Inside, the pews were filled. Men, women, even children, all facing forward, unmoving. No priest, no sound except that same low hum vibrating in the wooden floorboards. And then in the center aisle, I saw her, the girl from the missing poster, Mara Hughes. Same braids, same chipped tooth. She turned her head just enough to look at me and whispered something I could barely hear. Too late to remember. The next thing I knew, I was waking up on my porch. The sun was up, the lights worked again, and the air smelled like rain that never came. When I went into town that morning, everyone acted normal. People chatting, coffee brewing, music playing. The waitress at the diner even greeted me by name. "Morning, Caleb," she said cheerfully. I froze. "My name's not Caleb." She blinked, smile fading. "Of course it is, honey. You've lived here your whole life." And just for a second, just one flicker, I almost believed her. The next morning, I decided to check the basement. I don't know why. Maybe because of that weird half-memory that kept nagging at me, like I'd already been down there before. The stairs groaned under my feet, and the air grew colder with each step. The light switch didn't work, so I used my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through layers of dust and cobwebs, revealing boxes stacked against the far wall, old paint cans, a broken rocking chair, and something half buried under a sheet. When I pulled the cloth away, I found a small tape recorder, a heavy silver kind with big plastic buttons and a cracked battery lid. Someone had written a name on it with black marker. Property of C. McCarthy. That name made me stop cold. The McCarthy house, the one that never existed. The recorder was still warm, like it had been used recently. I pressed play. At first, all I heard was static. Then, faintly, a man's voice, hoarse, urgent, whispering into the mic. "If you're hearing this, it's already watching you." The sound made my stomach drop. Then came silence. No click, no stop. Just breathing. Slow, steady breathing. I rewound it and played it again. Same message, same pause, same breath. But on the third listen, something changed. The voice spoke again, only this time it said my name. Caleb. The air went still. I yanked the batteries out, tossed the recorder back under the sheet, and bolted upstairs. But that night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of that breathing, it was still in my head, looping like it had burrowed somewhere deep. Around 2 a.m., I heard something faint in the hall, a soft whirring sound, mechanical but uneven. When I opened my bedroom door, the tape recorder was sitting at the top of the stairs. The little red light was blinking. I didn't touch it. I just watched as the play button pressed itself down, slowly with a tiny click. "If you're hearing this, it's already inside," the voice said again, lower now, almost a growl. The candle on my nightstand flickered, and the walls gave a long, creaking sigh, as if the house itself had exhaled. In the dark, somewhere below the floorboards, something began to whisper back. By Sunday morning, the whole town was dressed in its best. Men in pressed shirts, women in pastel dresses, children with combed hair and glazed smiles. Bells rang from the church steeple, 3 short chimes, 1 long, echoing down every empty street like a reminder. I hadn't planned to go, but when I looked out my window, I saw Mrs. Adler standing at the end of my driveway, waiting. She waved with that same polite, brittle smile. "It's time," she called. Something in her tone made it sound less like an invitation and more like an instruction. The church was packed, every pew filled, every head bowed in perfect rhythm, as if choreographed. The air smelled like candle wax and old wood. The preacher, a tall, clean-shaven man with a paper-thin voice, stood at the pulpit, reading from a Bible that looked decades older than him. But he wasn't reading scripture. The words didn't sound right. "We are not forgotten. We are not missing. We are memory made flesh," the crowd murmured back, their voices blending in a low, trembling hum. "We are memory made flesh." I looked around. No one blinked. No one coughed or shifted. Even the children stared straight ahead, their faces blank. Then the preacher's eyes met mine. "Welcome home, Caleb," he said. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. He smiled. "You've returned to us, as all must do. The forgetting is mercy, you understand. The forgetting keeps us whole." The crowd began to sing. Not words, exactly. Just a long, droning chant, the same note repeated until it started to vibrate in my bones. Somewhere in that noise, I thought I heard something else. Another voice underneath the others. A whisper threading through the hymn. "Run." The lights flickered. The air pressure dropped. Every candle flame bent toward the aisle, pointing straight at me. And then the entire congregation turned their heads, perfectly synchronized, to face me. Hundreds of glassy eyes, hundreds of unmoving smiles. "Don't remember," they said together. I stumbled backward, out through the doors, into blinding sunlight. The bells were still ringing, but now they sounded off, warped, too slow, like they were in underwater.
When I looked back, the church was empty. No preacher, no congregation, just rows of wooden pews and a single hymnal lying open on the floor. I picked it up. Every page was blank, except for one line written in red ink. If you forget them, they can't take you. But by then, I couldn't even remember who they were supposed to be. It was quiet for days after that. Too quiet, like the whole town was holding its breath again. No church bells, no chatter at the diner. Even the wind seemed to skip Harrow Creek altogether. Then one afternoon, I heard laughter. It came from the empty lot behind the old hardware store, the one with the faded "For Lease" sign that hadn't changed in decades. I followed the sound and saw a group of kids playing in the dirt, circling something they'd drawn in the ground with sticks. A ring. Inside it, small stones arranged in a strange pattern, like a spiral or maybe an eye. One of the girls, blonde hair, blue sundress, looked up and waved me over. "You can play too," she said. "What game is that?" I asked. She smiled. The gap between her teeth made her look both innocent and old. "It's called Find the Gone Ones." I crouched down beside them. "And how do you play?" She pointed at the circle. "You stand inside and say the name of someone who doesn't exist anymore." "Like imaginary friends?" I said, forcing a chuckle. The other kids giggled. "No, silly," one of the boys said. "Real people, the ones everyone forgot." That's when I noticed the stones. Each one had a word carved into it, faint, clumsy letters but readable. Tommy, Elsie, Mara, Frank, Mrs. P. "Mara," I said quietly. Her little girl's head tilted. "You remember her?" My mouth went dry. I think so." Her eyes lit up with something that wasn't joy. "Then you can't play," she whispered. "You can only play if you forget." I started to back away, but the boy in the baseball cap reached out and grabbed my wrist. His hand was ice cold. "It's your turn," he said. The other kids began to chant softly. "Find the gone ones, find the gone ones, find the gone ones." The air around the circle shimmered, not with light but with heat, like the air above asphalt on a summer day. The dirt began to ripple. I swear I saw fingers, pale, thin, reaching up from underneath, brushing the edge of the spiral. I ripped my arm free and ran. By the time I got back to my street, the laughter was gone. No children, no ring in the dirt, no sign they'd ever been there. But later that evening, I heard knocking at my door, soft, rhythmic, like the sound of small fists. When I finally opened it, no one was there. Just a line of stones on my porch, spelling out a single word: found. And from somewhere far down the street, in that hollow Harrow Creek quiet, a child's voice called my name. By the next morning, I'd made up my mind to leave. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just pack up the car and drive until the town disappeared in my rearview mirror. But the road out of Harrow Creek didn't make sense. I followed Highway 9 south for an hour, and somehow found myself passing the same gas station I'd filled up at earlier. The same broken neon sign buzzing open with the P half dark. I checked the map. The GPS dot hadn't moved. I tried again. Took a different turn. Same result. By dusk, the tank was almost empty. The air grew thick with humidity and that metallic smell, like rain on old coins. I pulled over near the creek bed that cut through the outskirts of town, the one I'd crossed days ago when I saw the man on the bridge. Only now, there was no bridge at all. Just a wide, sunken gash in the earth. The trees on either side leaned inward, their branches twisted like fingers reaching for each other. And standing at the edge was a figure. Tall, thin, wearing the same brown coat. My first thought was, it's him, the man from before. But as I stepped closer, my flashlight caught his face, and my stomach turned to ice. It was me. Older, gaunter, eyes hollow, and skin pulled tight like parchment. He smiled, or tried to. It looked more like his face had forgotten how. "You can't leave," he said. "You never did." My heart hammered in my chest. "What are you talking about?" He tilted his head, the movement slow, deliberate. "Look." He pointed down into the dry creek bed. I followed his gaze and saw what I thought were stones at first, but they weren't stones, they were faces. Hundreds of them, half submerged in the dirt, eyes open, mouths slack, each one faintly breathing. Their skin was gray, stretched thin as paper. Some of them moved slightly, twitching, like they were dreaming. I staggered backward, choking on air that felt too heavy to breathe. "You remember too much," the older me said. "That's why you stayed. That's why you become." Then, before I could say anything, he stepped into the pit. The soil rippled around him like water, swallowing him whole. The whispering started again, all those faces murmuring in one endless voice. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then they merged into something clear. "We are memory made flesh." I ran. I didn't look back. When I finally reached the house, the front door was already open. My bags were packed, neatly, perfectly, waiting by the door. But the note sitting on top wasn't mine. In careful handwriting, it said, "For the next tenant, hope he forgets faster." And beneath that, written in what looked like tried mud or blood, was my own name. The notice came the next morning, slipped under my door. Thick paper, official-looking seal, typed in perfect black letters. "Mandatory town meeting, tonight. Attendance required. For the good of Harrow Creek." I should have ignored it. I should have kept driving, even if the road looped forever. But some part of me, the part that still thought rules mattered here, made me go. Town Hall sat at the center of Main Street, its brick facade half covered in ivy and rot. Inside, every seat was filled, rows of people sitting perfectly still, their faces turned toward the stage where the mayor stood. He was an older man, gray hair slicked back, smile stretched too wide. Behind him hung a banner that read, "Together we remember." When he spoke, his voice had that syrupy politeness I'd come to dread. "Good evening, neighbors. We are gathered, as always, to reaffirm the truth that keeps us safe." The crowd echoed, almost in unison. "We are safe." He nodded, pleased. "Now, there have been rumors. Some of you may have seen things, or worse, remembered them. A chill passed through the room. Rumors are poison, he continued. We do not speak of those who left us, because no one leaves, no one is missing. Then he looked straight at me. Isn't that right, Caleb? The sound of my name, that name, made my stomach twist. I'm not, I started, but my voice cracked. My name isn't Caleb. I don't belong here. Every head in the room turned toward me at once, not fast, slow, synchronized, like a single body shifting, dozens of eyes unblinking. The mayor smiled again. Oh, but you do. You all do. He gestured toward the crowd. We are bound by memory, by mercy. Forgetting is our gift. The people began to murmur, low and rhythmic. I caught fragments. He remembers. He shouldn't remember. Take him to the creek. I stumbled backward as they rose from their seats. The floorboards creaked under the weight of dozens of synchronized footsteps. I could smell the same metallic tang from the night of the blackout, like rain and rust and something old rotting just beneath the surface. The mayor stepped down from the stage, his smile softening, almost kindly. It's all right, he whispered. You'll forget soon. It's easier that way. And then, in one motion, everyone spoke together, one voice in hundreds of mouths. No one is missing. The lights flickered. The air turned heavy. My vision blurred, and for a split second I saw their faces flicker like static, revealing something beneath. Hollow eyes, gray skin, mouths that opened too wide, whispering words I couldn't understand. When the lights came back, I was outside, standing alone on the courthouse steps. The town square was empty. The banner flapped gently in the breeze, torn in half. I looked down and realized I was holding something. A name tag. It said, Caleb. And when I looked at the reflection in the courthouse window, it was his face, staring back. The other me, the one I'd seen at the creek. When I woke up, it was morning again. Same sunlight, same chirping birds, same hum of the town coming alive. For a second, I almost believed everything had been a nightmare. Then I noticed the newspaper on the porch. It was wrapped around a familiar object, a small brass key. The tag read, Welcome, new tenant. My own handwriting. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of it. My car was parked in the driveway, but the back seat was filled with someone else's luggage. Same duffel bag, same coat I'd worn when I first arrived. Inside the house, everything was spotless. No dust, no boxes, no tape recorder. On the kitchen table sat a single note written in neat looping cursive. Hope you're handier than the last tenant. Only now, the ink wasn't black. It was red. The phone rang. I hadn't heard it ring once since I moved here. When I picked up, there was a long silence. Then a voice, mine but older, said, Don't forget too fast. They need you to remember just enough to replace the ones who didn't. The line went dead. Outside, the air shimmered. I saw movement at the edge of the street. A U-Haul pulling up. A young woman stepping out, looking around with the same cautious curiosity I'd had my first day. Mrs. Adler was waiting for her at the end of the driveway, smiling that brittle smile. From the porch, I called out, Wait! Don't! But she didn't even glance my way. She just turned, waved politely to Mrs. Adler, and carried her suitcase toward the house. Our house. I wanted to run to her, to grab her by the shoulders and tell her to leave, to scream that Harrow Creek wasn't real, that the people here weren't people. But my voice wouldn't come. My throat felt packed with dust and memory. The woman paused halfway up the walk. She looked at me for the first time, and for one terrifying instant, I saw confusion flash across her face. Recognition. Then it was gone. She smiled. "Hi, she must be Caleb." And just like that, everything slid back into place. The sky turned its quiet blue. The hum of the town steadied. Somewhere down the street, the church bells began their slow, familiar toll. 3 short chimes, 1 long. I stepped back into the house, the key still warm in my hand. In the mirror by the door, a reflection waited for me, patient, hollow-eyed, smiling faintly. "We are memory made flesh," it whispered. Outside, the welcome sign creaked in the wind, the letters barely visible beneath a fresh coat of paint. "Welcome to Harrow Creek, a good place to call home. Population, 1872. Still the same. Always the same."